2, 1, 0. Charles.
Yes.
Malachi, I'm at 0.
Oh my goodness.
So, remember how we learned about phrases and clauses, and then we extended it to adverbial phrases and clauses, which are like pieces of sentences that give more detail on an adverb, right? So basically an adverb, give more detail on a verb. So if like I'm talking about, if I'm saying I ran to the store, an adverbial phrase would give me more detail on the way that I ran. Okay, like a giraffe, I don't know, something like that. Does that make sense? So that's from last, my board, oh my gosh. So we're going to review noun phrases today, and then we're going to do a small assessment on it, and we're going to get into some reading, okay?
Next time.
So you are either taking notes. If you're on a computer, you are taking notes. If you're doing anything else, such as listening to music, you need to take the earbud out of your ear right now.
I love how she looks at me and then looks away.
Nate, headphone up. Okay. Are we good? All right.
That's good.
Noun phrases, children. So, Elijah,
That was a complete. I meant yes, this is all.
are we ready?
Yes, this is all.
Okay. So, someone remind me what a phrase and a clause is. What's the difference? I know I'm trying to like block it with my massive height. Jillian?
The phrase doesn't have a subject or verb, but a clause contains.
Okay, so both are figures of speech or parts of a sentence. A phrase does not have both a subject and a verb, okay? So if I said, I ran to the grocery store like a giraffe, is like a giraffe a phrase, put up one finger, or a clause, two fingers?
Like a giraffe.
Like a giraffe. Is that a phrase or a clause? Like a giraffe, a phrase or a clause? I showed everyone's finger there. That's a phrase, okay? Because there's no subject and verb. If I said like a giraffe running in the safari, I'm getting really creative here. Okay. Then it would be a clause because there's a subject and a verb. All right? So, a phrase does not have a subject and a verb. Oh my gosh.
Now it works.
Like a giraffe, okay? So, at the store would be a phrase. Clause has a subject and a verb, but doesn't necessarily have to make sense on its own, okay? So, if I came up to Aiden and I said, because I had breakfast, that doesn't make sense, right? But it's still a clause because it's a subject and a verb. It's just it's a dependent clause. Doesn't make sense on its own. So there's two types of clauses. Remember, there's independent and dependent. Okay. Independent would be a clause that can stand on its own and make sense. So Elijah, can you give me an example of an independent clause?
Before I went to the store, I went to the store.
I went to the store, right? Makes sense. Good. Okay, Karis, can you give me an example of a dependent clause? That's not on the board. Elijah, Can you give me an example of a dependent clause?
Like,
Karis! Pay attention! Okay, start over. Make me mad. That's me being mad. Teacher. Okay. So clauses. That is when a part of a sentence has a subject and a verb. Okay? Subject and a verb. Independent means it can stand on its own. So Elijah, what was the example you said?
I went to the store.
I went to the store. It's independent, it can stand on its own, it makes sense. I can come up to any of you and say, I went to the store. And you'll be like, cool, Miss Lynn, good for you. Okay? Now, dependent clause on the other hand, it cannot stand on its own. Karis, is there a subject and a verb in that? Before I went to the store, what's the subject of the sentence? I'm doing the action, right? I went. Okay? So it's a clause, but it doesn't make sense. I can't come up to you and say, before I went to the store and looked at you, you would just be like, okay, that makes no sense. That's the difference between an independent and a dependent. You weren't here, neither was Nate or Mia, okay, when we went over this. So that's the difference between clauses and phrases. What we're talking about right now are phrases with noun phrases. All right. So remember, a noun phrase does not have both a subject and a verb. It includes a noun and its modifiers. A modifier is just like description words, okay? So this folder, someone give me a modifier. Red. Great job, Levi. What else? Levi! Oh my God. actually be a rectangle? I'm no math teacher,
It's fine,
but.
it's Bailey, but.
F. Rude.
I'll bet
Okay.
you.
I think it's a
Yes,
rectangle either because it has the
Shape.
Okay, we're gonna roll. There we go.
Wait, but isn't a rectangle a square? Or is a square a rectangle?
Charles just is trying to get me off track because he knows it will work. Okay, so stay with me. So modifiers are something like red, shapely, rectangular, squarish. Did you have a question?
Squarish is not a word.
Huh? Candy?
Handy.
Handy! Okay, yes, I was like, candy. Yes, something that is handy, okay? So check this out. Everyone should have their eyes on the board. Nate, I look at the board.
I have the slide open. I'm reading it right.
I just want you to look at the board. Number 1, there was a soft breeze blowing yesterday. Okay, what's the subject of the sentence?
Soft breeze.
Breeze. Okay?
Oh,
The breeze was the subject. Now, what gives me more detail about that noun? Elijah?
Soft and blowing.
Yes, but in this case, just soft breeze, 'cause that's the verb, right? Because that's what the breeze is doing.
This man wants extra credit.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So soft breeze is a noun phrase because it is a phrase or just a word that's giving more detail about the noun in the sentence. Let's look at number 2 together. The fluffy orange cat meowed. Someone tell me what the noun is. Raise your hand, please. Tessa? What's just the subject of the sentence? The cat, okay? Now, what is the noun phrase or the group of phrases or words next to it that gives me more details about that nice little kitty? Faith.
Fluffy orange.
Fluffy orange, okay? Do you see how easy this is?
Yep.
You want to use these when you're writing so that you can give more detail. 3, lastly, I sat beside the green and brown trash can, okay? What's the subject of the sentence? Trash can. Kids are nailing it, okay? Noun phrases that give more detail, green and brown. Any questions so far?
Would this be trash can or the can? Because trash is the can.
Whoa. Phil.
We're getting serious here. Is that important? I don't know. I think it's trash can. I think that's one word and I spelled it wrong, to be honest. Okay? Let's check this out. Look at the board. Johnny. Okay? So here are nouns, right? Dog, sister, friend, dictionaries. By the way, what is a noun?
Person, place, or thing.
A person, place, or a thing is a noun. Okay?
Or an idea.
Or an idea. Thank you, Caleb. Caleb's like, idea! Okay? Noun phrase, on the other hand, remember, it's a phrase or a group of words or a word that modifies that noun. Gives it more detail, okay? My dog, right? You're saying whose dog is that gives it more detail. A sister, it's basic, but it still gives more.
Not my
This
sister.
friend or some dictionaries, it doesn't even have to be more than a word, okay? Why is this important?
Because you said so.
That's not me, okay? This is your standard for writing as freshmen, okay? So use various types of phrases, including noun, and clauses, independent, dependent, and noun, to convey specific meaning and add variety to your writing, okay? When you guys write a cover letter in the future for a job that you need in order to own a house, or pay rent, or eat food, or have Starbucks, which are all very important. If you write a basic cover letter that does not include noun phrases, adverbial phrases, other types of details that add more depth, you're likely not going to be able to have that Starbucks every day. Okay, that's why this is important. Starbucks.
We need Starbucks every day.
All right, so plus noun phrases provide more description and allow the reader to better understand the subject. Okay, you guys can picture that fluffy orange cat a lot better than you could just picture the cat. Does that make sense?
I had to stick about Garfield.
You want to do that? Me too. Me too. You want to do that in your writing. What's up, Caleb?
Self-off in middle
Can we
of
throw
sentence.
fat
Me
in like
too.
fucking orange?
But where's Otis?
My dog.
All right. The next thing you're doing is right here, complete noun phrases assignment. This is going to tell me whether or not you guys get it.
Ooh.
Okay, it's a pretty small point assignment. It's basically just for me to be like, okay, we get it. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to identify the noun phrase. So either highlight it, bold it, write the sentence, take it out. I don't care how you answer this question. Somehow identify the noun phrase. Okay, on your own, go and do this. Nate? Yeah, I will. Okay.
Okay.
And then 2 says revise the sentence to include a noun phrase. Okay? So it says the tear gas limits our visibility. How can I rewrite that sentence to include a noun phrase?
Can we just do this in the text entry?
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Would you care if I bolded the
Nope.
noun phrase? Wait, so that's okay or you don't
Yes,
care?
that's that.
Oh.
I had it in this. Here, let me just read that.
What am I doing?
What are you doing? Where have you been, bro?
Well, I thought it was like a test.
It is.
Where's the test?
It's in the noun phrases.
Colon modules.
So what's the...
Modules.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, wait.
There's gonna be no reason you can change it.
What?
Sky 2 is
I don't know if it will take me.
what's the number?
This guy. I mean, opaque would be... Yeah, I don't know.
Wait, Miss Good. I mean, oh my god.
You have cursed her with the bad name! What is wrong with you?
This is good.
For shame!
Harry,
Shame!
shame.
Shame! 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 Boo, Mary!
Okay. That's guy. Like that's all
That's just a noun, right?
no phrase. So would it be this guy too is good?
So it doesn't, remember, it doesn't have to be surrounding that specific noun. It can be any noun.
Yeah, but wait, I have a question. Is Twilight? Because Twilight is also the setting, so it could be like a setting.
So it's airy.
No, if you were describing a setting, if you said like the setting happened to be Twilight, then in this case it's saying the Twilight.
So it's airy.
So like area Twilight.
Wait, it is?
Yes.
Yeah, I never would have gotten that.
Wait, is it?
So remember kids, I may have confused you.
Tear
Yeah.
gas. What's tear gas?
You know what tear gas is?
It's stuff that cops throw into houses.
Oh, God.
Alright, I'll wait. I have a video of my husband getting tear gas in the academy. It's hilarious.
Oh, you need to see the video of my
It
dad.
might be airy Twilight.
They're like throwing up after and it's like, oh that
Or
sucks.
they're all just like on the ground, just rubbing their
So in a noun phrase, the noun phrase that you're finding doesn't necessarily have to be the subject of the sentence. Okay, there could be several nouns in a sentence, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be the one subject that is the subject of that particular sentence. Okay? Emma, your hand's up, honey.
I was gonna ask what your guys' plan is. My brother got it and
Yes. It's not fun. People
People
literally
That's
pass
how
out and
that-
they're
that's how
being
that-
carried
I know
out.
it feels like. It's like how they all just
Snow bunny on it.
Okay, what is tear gas?
Yeah, it was good. So I can describe it. But I thought it was pepper spray.
Did you finish this?
Someone needs to tell me.
Okay, so let's go back.
Why'd you go to the thesaurus for
Tear gas is
It's just right.
it's a chemical that is used like a riot setting where like they're dangerous or they're dangerous components, or they might use it on men. And it basically makes your body like convulse. So it's like this cloudy gas that people have. So like every police officer or military person has to go through a tear gas exposure in order to get through this training. Does that help? It is relevant to the story we're reading. No, it's like cloudy. Yellowish tint.
Oh, that's really good.
I can't see either of your fingers.
You took my word, cheater.
Yes.
Is this line the same as hers? Is this
Did you
right?
take hers too?
No.
Or did you take
How dare you?
I was trying
She goes to the thesaurus and she's like, I'm gonna
No,
take
I
your
heard
word.
the source on
That's not right.
Yes, that's like you write the computer, right?
No.
The second one needs some work.
The second one?
Because you're just saying the sky, right?
Well, are we supposed to say that?
Yes, but there's another noun phrase in there that's a little more specific.
Dude, my grade is
Abundant.
It's good, you're on day 4 of...
Wow. The problem with starting over is that, like, if you get a 0 on a 10-point assignment, you go down like 20%.
No reading aloud.
Who? Who's this?
Like, if you start over fresh, you have 100%. You get a 0 out of 10 on an assignment,
Then who was it?
your grade goes down like an 80%.
Got it.
Oh,
All right, bring it in 3, 2, 1, 0. Thank you. All right, so the story we're reading today has to do with the Middle East and the Arab Springs. Have you guys?
Oh no.
You guys are not in history. In middle school, did you guys ever talk about Arab Springs or know what it is?
Nope.
No. All right.
Familiar.
So the Arab Spring was an uprising of basic, like a revolt, a revolution against oppression, against dictatorship, within the Middle East, and it was primarily spread through Twitter. So these countries would limit their citizens' ability to like view news, and the news was limited. So everything that was coming out wasn't authentic. But the one outlet people had to like let the world know what was happening was through Twitter. So this was like a really big event because Twitter kind of really fueled up. This was in like 2010-ish, around this time period. Okay, so social media. This was one of the first instances of social media being like, this can affect real world change, right? It's not just for us to post selfies and share the salad we had for dinner. Yes, Johnny.
So I've actually read about this,
Mm-hmm.
and it was bad.
Yes, it's very bad. We're going to watch a video to give you guys some background information. So you should not be on your computers at all. You should be looking at the screen. And then once we get to reading into Cairo, which is the story we're going to read, you guys will understand what is happening. Okay? All right, can I show it?
Nice.
It already looks really sad. The guy sits. That's really sad.
So they say that someday AI will transform the human race. Well, today, you're a little busy transforming your call center, dealing with millions of customers a year. Like this one.
No, I'm pretty sure I didn't order a squirrel playing the guitar.
That's why you work with Watson. It works with your systems to resolve calls faster and improve customer satisfaction.
I detected fraud and helped reassign a new credit card.
Honey, they're overnighting us a new card.
For AI that works with tools you already use, choose Watson.
Hello.
The best AI for the job.
All right.
It's been a year like no other in the Middle East. Some rulers have gone, others survived, some countries are still in turmoil.
All right, so just for your understanding of the context, this video is several years old, about a year after the uprising started. It's kind of interesting because like the language I'm talking about is very like Hunger Games-ish, right? I'm talking about like uprising and revolt, and it just, I think it's very interesting for you guys because this is the kind of stuff that you read. That is paralleling, what? Oh, I just heard one root word of that, and I was like, that language is very specific to what's happening in the real world, right? Like, it's for kids, but it's gearing you guys up to understand issues in the world.
It started in Tunisia. A year ago, police stopped a young vendor, Mohamed Bouazizi, from selling his fruit on the street. In protest, he set himself on fire, frustrated and furious at a corrupt, all-powerful regime. Weeks later, he died, and it touched a national nerve. People came out and dared to denounce their government, defying the riot police sent to confront them. Abruptly, President Ben Ali lost control and fled, his regime suddenly over. The touchpaper of revolution had been lit. When it spread to Cairo, people asked, could Egypt really be next? Its ballooning population certainly shared Tunisia's frustrations. Power concentrated in the hands of an unelected elite, rampant corruption, a brutal security apparatus.
We are tired. We are tired.
President Mubarak, in power for over 28 years, had a huge, all-pervasive security network. But word of the protests spread on Facebook and Twitter. The army refused to open fire. Mubarak fled with his family. In Libya, revolt began in the east, a region long rebellious against Colonel Gaddafi's rule. He called the rebels rats and cockroaches and vowed to crush them. Vain and dictatorial, he and his family lived in a world divorced from reality. For months, Libya's civil war looked like a stalemate. until Western air power and help from Arab states drove Gaddafi's troops back. His end came here, dragged out of a drainage pipe and shot by his own people. In Yemen, popular protest against the 33-year rule of President Saleh has been complicated by tribal rivalries. The president has agreed to step down, but for now his relatives remain in powerful positions. Bahrain has seen the most serious violence in the Gulf. Around 40 killed, thousands injured, as Shiites demand more rights from the Sunni monarchy.
There's so much tension in these Shiite villages that when processions like this meet the security forces, often it ends in tear gas, more wounds and more animosity.
Syria has suffered terribly this year. Over 5,000 killed, countless others tortured. As the country lurches towards civil war, its president appears to be in denial.
No government in the world kill its people unless it's led by a crazy person. For me as president, I became president because of the public support.
The movement many call the Arab Awakening has yet to run its course. But what started a year ago with the Tunisian fruit seller is now unstoppable. The Arab world has had enough of dictatorship. Frank Gardner, BBC News.
Okay, so let me give some context, okay? So what is a dictatorship? What is a dictatorship? Levi? Yeah, so it's the person in power who decides, they put they themselves in power, they are not elected in power, and they have the power to do anything. So in these Arab states or countries, each one of these countries it has a dictator that is one person that has all the power. So whether that decides to torture you, whether that decides to kill you, whether that decides they can put your business down, they have that power. So in all of these situations, and if you've been following current updates, Assad from Syria is the one who's been gassing his own people, chemical gas he drops on his own people, killing children all the time. That's been going on for years, right? So this stuff is still an issue in 2019. So like almost 10 years later, it's still an issue, right? And so that was kind of the guy at the beginning where you're like, he couldn't sell his fruit, so he lit himself on fire, right? It wasn't necessarily like, I can't sell my bananas! That's not what was happening, right? He wasn't able to make a living because some dictator said, oh, that they're not going to buy your fruit, they're going to buy our government's fruit. Because then the government reaps all the profits, okay? So he was the first one to kind of start this revolution, and that's what's going on, okay? So all those people you saw revolting, thousands died in order to get their freedom. All right, any questions? All right, so...
Is that him?
Yeah, Mary? Assad? Yeah, so the guy to end was like talking like this, kind of. He is one of the most evil people in the history of the world.
Wait, why? He doesn't even look like Syrian. He looks like white.
We just had a whole unit on not labeling people what they look like.
It's just like I was. Like,
no, I hear ya.
Jeez, Mary.
I hear ya.
He looks pretty chill.
Alright, so go ahead and log into your online textbooks. Nate and Mia, pull out your
Page 73.
yes.
You're special.
Charles.
I wrote word choices.
Page 73.
Yes, page 73. All right, page 73. Yeah, what's up?
Is this right? No.
Maybe she not a
Wait, what page is it on again?
73. Page 73. Alright, are we all there?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to read the background, so follow along. In 2010, the call for democratic reforms reverberated throughout the Middle East and North Africa in a movement known as the Arab Spring. In Egypt, the unrest forced Hosni Mubarak's long-ruling regime out of power. This excerpt from Adolf Swift's personal account of the revolution describes the third day of mass protests in Cairo. Cairo is, I believe it's the capital of Egypt. I know it's a city. It's the capital of Egypt. So how they talked about Egypt was the second place these revolts spread to. That's what's going on, okay? It says, Swift, born in 1950, was born in Egypt and resides in both Cairo and London. Her novel, The Mouth of Love, was a finalist for the Booker Prize for Fiction, and she contributes to The Guardian and other English and Arabic news organizations. So technically this is a diary that we're going to read, okay?
Wait, isn't that kind of snooping in the business?
She published it. It's her experiences of the protests, okay?
It's an autobiography.
No, that would be detailing her life. This is just her experience in the protests.
There's something else for that quote. It's a memoir.
Yeah, similar.
You failed me.
From Cairo, my city, our revolution. Diary by Adolf Swift. Friday, 28th of January, 5 o'clock p.m. The river is a still steely gray, a dull pewter. Small scattered fires burn and fizz in the water. We've pushed out from the shore below the Ramses Hilton and are heading into midstream. My two nieces, Salma and Mariam, are on either side of me in the small motorboat. As we get further from the shore, our coughing and choking subsides. We can draw breath, even though the breath burns. And we can open our eyes to see an opaque dusk, heavy with tear gas. Up ahead, Kasira Nil Bridge is a mass of people, all in motion, but all in place. We look back at where we were just minutes ago on 6 October Bridge and see a Central Security Forces personnel carrier on fire, backing off, 4 young men chasing it, leaping at it, beating at its windscreen. The vehicle is reversing wildly, careering backwards east towards downtown. Behind us, a ball of fire lands in the river, a bright new pool of flame in the water.
So do you guys see that graphic of this protest?
The sky, too, is gray, so different from the airy twilight you normally get on the river at this time of day. The opera house looms dark on our right, and we can barely make out the slender height of the Cairo Tower. We don't know it yet, but the lights of Cairo will not come on tonight. A great shout goes up from Kasira Nil. I look at Salma and Mariam. Yes, let's, they say. I tell the boatmen we've changed our minds. We don't want to cross the river to Giza and go home. We want to be dropped off under Kasira Nil Bridge. And that is why we, myself and 2 beautiful young women, appeared suddenly in the Kasir el-Nil underpass among the Central Security vehicles racing to get out of town, and all the men leaning over the parapet above us with stones in their hands stopped in mid-throw and yelled, "Run! Run!" and held off with the stones so they wouldn't hit us as we skittered through the screeching vehicles to a spot where we could scramble up the bank and join the people at the mouth of the bridge.
Okay, so, if you guys have paid attention at all in English classes, sometimes when you read literature, the author doesn't describe explicitly what happened, and you're kind of like, well, I think this is what's going on, and it just is irritating sometimes when you're trying to figure it out, right? And in that scene right there, she's doing just that, okay? She's not telling you exactly what happened, but what do you think is happening? What do you think just happened? Johnny?
I think that they were, like, gonna go home to get out of the way of everything, and then they decided not to.
Why did they decide not to? Anyone have an idea? Ava?
I think they were helping with the protest, and they were like for it, and then they were gonna go home because they were done, but then they heard like an uproar, and they're like, let's go over there, there's more protesting, and then they got out of the way of people throwing stones at like government officials, and they wanted to throw stones too.
Yeah, at that first line on line 20, She says a great shout goes up. I look at Selma and Miriam. Yes, let's, they say. So they get like re-motivated and kind of like hyped up. Like that was their hype man, right? Like those shouts in order to like get back into the demonstration. Okay?
So we ran through the underpass, scrambled up the bank, and found ourselves within, inside, and part of the masses. When we'd seen the crowd from a distance, it had seemed like one bulk, solid. Close up like this, it was people, individual persons with spaces between them, spaces into which you could fit. We stood on the traffic island in the middle of the road. Behind us was Kasir El Nil Bridge. In front of us was Tahir, and we were doing what we Egyptians do best, and what the regime ruling us had tried so hard to destroy. We had come together, as individuals, millions of us, in a great cooperative effort. And this time, our project was to save and to reclaim our country. We stood on the island in the middle of the road, and that was the moment I became part of the revolution. For 20 years I have shied away from writing about Cairo. It hurt too much. But the city was there, close to me, looking over my shoulder, holding up the prism through which I understood the world, inserting herself into everything I wrote. It hurt. And now, miraculously, it doesn't. Because my city is mine again. Masr is Egypt, and Masr is also what Egyptians call Cairo. On Tuesday, 1st of February, I watched a man surveying the scene in Tahir with a big smile. The sun was shining and people were everywhere, old and young, rich and poor. They talked and walked and sang and played and joked and chanted. Then he said it out loud. Ya Masr, it's been a long time. We have missed you.
Okay, so if you guys were at all confused as to what is happening, sometimes this is a narrative, right? It's in a diary entry, but it's a narrative. Writers will sometimes like interrupt the story to give a little bit of like personal info. So that's what's happening right here. So she's talking about Cairo, and then she goes, for 20 years I've shied away from writing about Cairo. Okay, so that's how she's formatting it. She's interrupting the story with her own personal like input. Okay.
We have missed you. On the traffic island at the Kasir El Nil entrance to Tahir, you turned 360 degrees, and everywhere there were people. I could not tell how many thousands I could see. Close up, people were handing out tissues soaked in vinegar for your nose, Pepsi to bathe your eyes, water to drink. I stumbled, and a hand under my elbow steadied me. The way ahead of us was invisible behind the smoke. From time to time, there would be a burst of flame. The great hotels, the Semiramis Intercontinental, Shepherd's, the Ramses Hilton, had all darkened their lower floors and locked their doors. On the upper floor balconies, stick figures were watching us. At the other end of Medan, from the roof of the American University, the snipers were watching us too. Silently. Everywhere, there was a continuous thud of guns, and from time to time a loud, intermittent rattling sound. We stood. That was our job. The people at the back. We stood and we chanted our declaration of peace. Selmiya! Selmiya! While our comrades at the front, unarmed, fought with the security forces. From time to time, a great cry would go up, and we would surge forward. Our friends had won us another couple of meters, and we followed them and held our ground.
Alright, so do you guys know what syntax is?
Yeah.
What's syntax?
Thing that appears on your calculator when you type in 0 by 0.
Sure. Not in math. Aiden, do you know what it is?
Syntax is your like method of
like your
Yes.
phrasing or the way you say
Yes.
something.
The way you arrange words in a sentence. Okay, so look at the board. Look at how she phrases this, okay? On the upper floor balconies, stick figures were watching us. At the other end of the, Madon, from the roof of the American University, the snipers were watching us too, silently. Everywhere there was a continuous thud of guns and from time to time, a loud intermittent rattling sound. We stood. You see how she's changing up the way she formats her sentence to kind of like make it more intense and change the tone and the mood? Okay. By adding those like one-word sentences, she's being like super like affirmative and kind of like creating this tone of like of intensity. Do we see that? How you can do that? Yes? Anyone like what the heck you talking about?
Yeah.
Intense music, intensity.
Actually, I am. How can she have a sentence that has
So if we're talking about a grammar lesson, that's technically not correct, right, to have silently. But if we're talking about a personal narrative where you're writing and using your own writing style, that's totally fine. Okay? Like if you did that in an essay, I'd be like, no, Elijah. If you did that in a narrative, I would let you do that.
Really?
Does that make sense? There's different styles of writing. There's academic and then there's creative. Okay? Nate, sit up.
We sang the national anthem. 8 months ago, some young protesters from the 6th of April group had been arrested in Alexandria for singing the national anthem. It was instigatory, the prosecution said. We sang it. On 28th of January, standing at that momentous crossroads, the Nile behind us, the Arab League building to our left, the old Ministry of Foreign Affairs to our right, seeing nothing up ahead except the gas and smoke and fire that stood between us and our capital, we stood our ground and sang and chanted and placed our lives with all trust and confidence in each other's hands. Some of us died.
So, first of all, why would she end it like that? Why would she end this entry like that? Yeah.
Just to give like how heavy this actually was and how it's serious.
People gave their lives to give other people freedom. Okay? Isn't it insane that that is still happening in today's world? Right? Like, that's still happening. This was 2010 in this situation. Okay? People are dying to give other people freedom. So, one thing I wanted to point out, why on earth would she say 8 months ago some young protesters from the 6th of April group have been arrested in Alexandria for singing the national anthem? It was instigatory. Why would she say that? What's the point? Why would she include that? Julie? Yeah, it gives the reader background, and it also like elongates the understanding of how long this issue has been happening.
Well, it
right?
actually says it was instigatory, the prosecution said. So she's saying that's what the prosecution said to them, why they got arrested.
And why they're singing it now, right? They're trying to be instigatory now. Yes?
It was very similar to like in the Hunger Games when they did like the whistling and it was this or something.
Yes.
Yeah. It was like
I can't remember what I was reading the other day, and it was an actual event, and something happened like that where they gave a sign of respect. That's why I was saying it's so interesting when you guys read literature, like for your age. Those authors are reflecting on a real world experience. So while it's fun for you to read when you're like 12 or 13, and you're like, ooh, cool, movies and books, they're actually criticizing society, right? You don't just write a book to write a book. There's a whole purpose that you're doing it. All right, so the next thing you guys have, you have a word choice and tone assignment. Okay, so go ahead and pull this up. I'll give you guys about a minute to do that. Pull that up and then we'll discuss it. So everyone should be on their Chromebooks, headed to that. Tessa, hun, did I give you a book?
Oh, you can erase mine too.
Well, I still need to know the number. Charles, I need your Mice and Men book. Daniel, your Mice and Men book. Yeah, I'm going to join. You gave me second. That's what you did. All right, anyone need more time? Are we all here? Okay, to get here.
Actually, no.
All right, here's what we're doing. Here's our assignment. Follow along, please. What's up, buddy? Oh, thank you. I'll erase your name. Best condition. All right, we've been over tone before, but here's a reminder. Tone is an author's attitude towards the subject, okay? So for instance, let's say Caleb decides to give me some tone, right? I say, Caleb, take your hat off because you're in a school setting. And he goes, I'm not going to take my hat off. I'm like, you need to watch your tone, young man, right?
I'm not giving up my hat.
He clearly has an attitude towards the subject we're talking about. Does that make sense? Okay? I say that a lot. I don't like tones because you have an attitude towards me. All right? That's what this is. So a tone is an author's attitude towards the subject. What's up, Nate?
What if it's happy tone?
Then great. To create a tone, authors choose words with specific connotations or the attitudes or feelings associated with the word. The connotation of a word or phrase may be positive or negative. For example, the word chicken has negative associations, right? Because if I call you a chicken, it's because you're scared to do something. It has a negative connotation. You have negative feelings about it. Okay? If I call you a baby, you're not like, oh, thank you, you called me a baby. Okay? Negative connotation. By noticing an author's choice of words, you can figure out their tone. Okay, so if you can analyze the words that they choose, you can clearly see the attitude they have towards the subject. So, in Cairo, My City, Our Revolution by Adaf Suif shifts or changes her tone to reflect the event she is describing. As you analyze the text, select quotes to show how specific words impact the tone of particular sentences or whole sections of the text. Use a chart to help you analyze specific words and details. Make sure to quote an actual phrase or sentence from the text and then explain how the word choice creates a tone. So, here's what you're doing. On the left-hand side, you're going to find a quote from the text that you think is a very calculated word choice. Okay, like she wasn't just writing, she specifically chose words here in this example I'm choosing. So, for example, I chose, the opera house looms dark on our right. All right? Now I'm going to go over here and say, okay, what does this show about the tone? In this example, she uses the word looms, right? Looms kind of has a negative connotation because it makes you feel that there is something bad or scary about it. So when she's saying like it looms dark over there, it kind of creates like a freaky, mysterious, creepy, what'd you say? Atmosphere or tone. Excellent.
I have an example.
You're going to do it on your own. Okay? So, any questions onto what I'm asking you? Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. I know what to do.
Different question.
Okay. I'll come around. Okay? Yes.
I can't click on the chart.
Yeah, me neither.
You have to make your own chart.
Oh, does it not let you actually?
No, we
No,
can't edit
no,
it.
So,
just grab the chart.
all you have to do is you just do a table or something. I think that's what it's
No,
called.
no, like just grab the entire text box with your clicker, like drag over like it's words, and copy it. Yeah. And just
Okay, just copy and paste it. Or what'd you say, Amy?
Insert a table.
Insert a table. There you go. I'm sorry. I thought it would be able to drag down.
Can we work together on this?
Yeah. Yes, you only.